Okay, now we've got our general idea of setup. Let's take a little bit of a closer look to the tom-tom angles. And notice where the throne is and where the drum head comes to. In the suspension ring system that Gretsch has, and in others, you have some room there to play with the drum. As I hold the camera steady, watch how much I can push the drum up when I'm holding it to adjust its angle. Take that into account. Take the amount that it will drop into account so that once you have it dropped, you see how this parallel line here is parallel to the plane, the planar surface, if we were to draw it out or image it out, of the throne, which is parallel to the ground. So if you draw a straight line from left to right across the diameter of the circle of the throne and use the rim edge as the parallel line to that, that's a good angle, a good playing angle and height. Actually, it doesn't even matter the height of the tom at that point. The angle is good. So you can get a good solid hit on the center of the head and also get a good controllable, without much movement, a subtle movement to control rim shots when necessary to hit for the drum. And many styles of music would call for that. Typically jazz and Latin, and sometimes rock. And certainly in solos, you want to use that as a color sound. Now, let's look at the Gretsch model ball joint, swivel joint attachments. All right? This is not a universal joint, although it is universal in its ways that it can tighten to a certain degree, pun intended. There's only a certain degree of range of motion that you can give when the ball is centered off and the L bracket is centered in the pocket or the socket of the L bracket system. Now, if you take a close look to this, you see where the wing nuts are. It doesn't afford us to be able to swing this drum all the way around if we wanted to do a 3-drum configuration. So what's blocking that? Well, someone put this drum set together years ago and probably just didn't think about it too much. But you can tell that this drum is considerably higher on the post than it needs to be. Where this drum here is pretty much around the center, it could be lower. Now, how can we fix that? Basically, all we have to do is take this swivel head and put it above this swivel head. We can't go any farther than this. This is actually the bottom of a flange, welded flange piece that is on top of here for an extra cymbal stand, or actually extra tom stand from a different drum manufacturer if you wanted to. That's basically that. You wouldn't want to necessarily flip this upside down or this upside down, although flipping this upside down could get you somewhere. In other words, if you've turned this one upside down and then swapped them left to right, that would give you that same range of motion, and the wing nuts could then fold against each other's surfaces. But then you might have issues of tightening and loosening for this ball joint then, because they're designed to have the hinge at the bottom, and then it kind of gravimetrically uses force to keep this tight. The weight is going down against the hinge. If it was going against the open part, you would find that quickly over time, in only a few months, you'd be tightening and tightening and tightening this because the force of this weight would be wanting to push that open. And it would also form divots into the heart, even though the plastic is quite hard in there of the ball joint. You'd still form divots in there, cut divots from this piece. And again, that wouldn't take much long of maybe playing or going to a practice place once or twice a week for over 2 months. You'd start to notice that the balls would fail, and you don't want that to happen. You never want your balls to fail. That is good for there. And then the same goes as a reiteration for cymbal height. It's the planar surface. What you want to do to make it play so that you're not forcing your wrist up like that as you're playing, and you're not having to do this. You want your wrist to be like that, so that it's fairly level across there, right? Not like that, and not like that. I'm exaggerating this, but you want freedom of motion, but in an at rest with the stick tip hitting the cymbal. This is how you want your arm, wrist, and hand to be at an at rest position for playing the cymbal. Now, right here, this angle, if we're going to take the rule and go by the tip of the bell to the edge of the cymbal that you can see, because cymbals are tapered, you're never going to see the tip edge if you're just looking across the top of the bell. Of course, if it's a near flat ride or a flat ride, that doesn't much matter. With a flat ride, I tend to go with the top of the felt to the edge of the cymbal. That's usually enough. But typically, flat rides aren't perfectly flat, but they can be. There are discs that you can play that have a really interesting sound to them. A nice, almost a pure tone. Tone fundamental and a couple of partials that are kind of interesting. It's like playing a large saw blade, so it can be an interesting instrument. All right, so as we can see, this planar angle is nowhere near the throne level. And as we discussed in video 1, once you adjust your throne height, everything angularly is based off of that. Crash cymbals are different. They're not necessarily based angularly, unless you want to play them as crashes and rides as a combination. And there you would just take the plane, right, to make a good crash ride. Just take that plane and do it across the middle of the seat. You see that? It's going across the middle. If you just want it to be crash without chopping your sticks in half, go to the back of the seat. Have that planar angle go right to the back of the seat. Doesn't have to be perfect, but near in that ballpark, you'll notice the difference when you're sitting and how your stick is hitting the cymbal. All right, I'll adjust this cymbal and then show you. But basically, after I loosen the nut, it's kind of generally going to fall. Well, I can't see the throne anymore. The light is kind of bad. Okay, so it's generally going to fall into that position right across the top there. Okay.